hoping that, let me see. I'm trying to get us to get Odette connected. There you are.
Oh
Hi.
my God. Hi, Adriana. I'm so excited.
I'm so excited too. Let me get my volume. How are you?
Oh my God. I'm super excited. Thank you everybody for joining us.
Yeah.
Adriana and I have been like geeking out about this topic, and I'm
We
so
have.
happy that we connected. Thank you so much, Adriana.
I know the wonders of the internet. So we met on a conversation on Encanto in a Latinx therapist group. And so from there, we both were super invested in Encanto and we were like, hey, let's check in. We schedule a Zoom and cafecito and we like talked for over an hour about this movie and all the areas that are like rattle our hearts. And so we're just super excited to kind of have been here together and joined in with all the other Encanto fans and all the people that have had like just like their hearts also rattle with this movie, and so we're excited to talk about it. And so I'm wondering if maybe we can start with a little bit of introductions for those of you who don't know us. So why don't you get us started?
Sure. My name is Odette Rivera. I am a mental health counselor. I'm from Chicago. I do a lot of work with families and children. I work with a lot with domestic violence survivors, and I also do school-based counseling with children in the school setting.
Awesome. And I'm Adriana Rodriguez, and I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist in Sacramento, California. And I have been working with children and families for the last 14 years. And this summer, I pivoted to working with adults only. But I know that moments like Encanto, it's just like, like my heart isn't working with families and kiddos. And so I'm so glad that we're here. And so I wanted to was wondering if you could tell us a little bit of it about what sparked your interest, like from the movie, like at what moment you said this is something really special, not only as a person, because I think for me it's been like both like as a person I found it really special, but also as a therapist. So what was that like for you?
Definitely. So I went to the movies with my family, and I was just like mind blown from the beginning,
Mm-hmm.
from the representation of. I'm Mexican. I was born in Mexico. I lived in Mexico for like most of my childhood. Just to see like the representation of the Latino community, not as violent people, just like the family values. I love the fact that Mexicans, we have, oh my God, we have. How come I'm missing my
Coco, the other movie.
Coco? Thank
Uh-huh,
you. We
uh-huh.
have
Yeah.
Coco. So I'm super excited that they continue, that Disney just didn't just say, okay, that's Latinos, check, but
Mm-hmm.
they went to another country and really represented Latinos in a very positive view with our values. So from that, I felt connected. And as a therapist, I use a lot of movies, Disney movies, songs, and I was like, whoa, I think I told you, Adriana, I left the movie theater like with my like mind blown, and at the same
Mm-hmm.
time there were so many layers of
Mm-hmm.
themes, and just it was personal and professional that I was just like,
Mm-hmm.
how about
Yeah.
you?
Yeah, I mean, for me, the same. We went to watch it at the with my wife, right? And my wife never cries a movie. Yo soy una llorona. Llorona, pero bien cachimbona, como dicen en El Salvador, chingona, right? Like, I like cried at everything, a commercial, like all of that. So to me, it wasn't like surprising, right? I remember a moment in the movie, and sorry, babe, like I'm telling your business, but I turned and she was like in tears, and I was like, okay, it's not just me. Like, this is like moving and rattling my heart, right? And then pretty at the end of the movie, like pretty quickly as I was exiting, I started thinking about, oh my gosh, like this has so many themes around family dynamics. I know things are personally I sometimes even struggle with my own family, but also themes that I specialize in working with first gen, and a lot of folks who come from families themselves who they're immigrants or their parents are immigrants, right? And so we're finding ourselves as first gen constantly battling the family values, right? Like this, por la familia, like we're doing good things for others, altruism, collectivism. And then it's about, what about me? How do I find myself, right? And for a lot of us first gens, that is like a tug of war in our hearts. And so that's what I felt when I came out from watching Encanto. That by the time the Disney Plus had it, I've watched it shamelessly. I gotta say, like at least 5 times in entirety. I've started and stopped several more times just because it's so good. And
Yes.
every time that I watch it, I like make even more connections. And so there was a couple of the themes that we identified, and I was wondering if you had any thoughts around family dynamics. What were the themes that kind of jumped out to you immediately?
Yes, I saw that Fun Suburban Mom is asking us for specific themes. So we're going to
Oh, okay.
right into that. So
Yeah.
yes, so for me, first of all, I do a lot of work with people that have experienced trauma, and just the theme of family trauma. You know, maybe we haven't experienced trauma ourselves yet, but maybe someone in our past, our ancestors did, which I'm sure, you know.
Mm-hmm.
At least someone in our past has.
Mm-hmm.
And then the trauma gets passed on through generations,
Mm-hmm.
through values, through
Mm-hmm.
fears.
Mm-hmm.
So we have in Encanto, Abuela, she was so afraid to lose what she worked so hard to get.
Mm-hmm.
And she was like, you know, she had everybody kind of like, you do this, you do this, you do this. They couldn't be themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of our family values come from trauma, from experiences that we learn. Okay, I worked so hard for this, I don't want to lose it again, or I don't want to
Trauma,
experience this.
protection, fear.
Yes. Trauma,
Mm-hmm.
protection, fear. Yeah. And that not only does it get passed on through attitudes and values, but even in our DNA.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of times we hear, like, for example, when it comes to the African American community, Latino community, or communities that have immigrated, well, you didn't come here. Well, no, but that's still part of me through my DNA and through my family dynamics, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, that's still part of me. It doesn't matter
The
how much.
history of migration, whether it was by choice or forced migration, it does get woven into the core of who we are in our DNA, even if we feel really far removed from that experience. I think that's what I hear you saying.
Exactly. Well, and yes, and even other experiences like having family that were in the Holocaust, having, you know, family that experienced war, that
Mm-hmm.
experienced
Mm-hmm.
hunger, that experienced all these different kinds of trauma. They
Mm-hmm.
are still a part of us.
And so as a theme, what we would call that as therapists, we would call it the transmission of intergenerational trauma, right? How at some point in our family tree, someone had an experience that impacted their life, their way of understanding, the way of functioning, the way of coping, even the way that we cope, right? We learn it in our families. And so in the example with the abuela, right? Like I've had these conversations back and forth and banter about how and there is like a little bit of like villainizing the abuela. Like there was this like meme or something, or saying like, oh, so the answer to healing our historical trauma, our intergenerational trauma, is to just yell at our elders. And I was like, oh, wait a minute, right? Because we have to recognize and we have to honor that grandmother, though causing pain and harming some of her family, right? The place that it was coming from was from her own unhealed parts of herself, right? And that was like the beautiful part at the end of the movie. And if you haven't seen the movie, there are going to be some spoilers because we're going to be talking about a couple of different scenes. But what we can see in that last scene, where like Mirabel can actually see the story of what happened to the grandmother, right? I found myself at that moment in the movie, when I've watched it other times, I've found myself wanting to witness and watch and be curious about what my own family's experiences, the elders in my family. You know, sometimes we know that there's been like secrets, right? That there's been like painful things that have happened, but do we really know? Do we really understand, right? How that pain changed something in that person? And that's what we saw with the abuela, right? That abuela was understood the being a survivor of this traumatic experience, right? As a milagro, as a miracle, and how this survival became the core of what she was going to be about the rest of her life. And it's
Right.
not because abuela was trying to be a mean person. It's not because abuela wanted to put everybody down or put people in different boxes. It was about the preservation of the survival of the family, because she already lost somebody, right? And that's what we would call intergenerational trauma, And when we're working with people, I know that when I'm working with people in therapy, it is always important to think about the context in which your issue, your symptom, your pain is also happening, because you weren't born with this, right? Like, it's the experiences that have accumulated, and a lot of them have to do with times that when we weren't even born.
Exactly. Well, and that's an awesome thing that the movie did a really good job at the end, because we all felt kind of, well, I mean, at least I felt frustrated with Abuela, like,
Oh, 100%.
right? But there's a beautiful scene at the end where Mirabel tells Grandma, I see you. Mm-hmm. I see how you survived alone. Mm-hmm. I see that we've come this far because of what you did. And I see you and I understand. So yes, she was angry before and frustrated, but then there came that moment of understanding. And I think that empathy is fundamental for healing our own, like, family, like our intergenerational trauma, you know, because we could be like, my family did this and this. But when we have empathy for those that survived, I think that's a beautiful, like, journey. When I work with my clients a lot, especially with my domestic violence survivors, when we survive trauma, we do things that are not the healthiest. They're going to help us survive, right? So, but once that trauma passed, sometimes we keep doing those things, and it's not healthy. So think of it, you know, if you're in a war zone, if you're somewhere that is toxic, you wear a hazmat suit, right? And you survive with your hazmat suit. It's going to make you feel safe. It's going to make you feel protected. But if you're somewhere safe, you're probably going to still want to wear your hazmat suit, even though you don't need it.
So I love that. I love that analogy. How do you know when to take it off? Like, when is the air clear again? It would be really hard to know when is okay to take off your hazmat suit, because the potential is that if you take it off too soon, that you could get harmed again, right? Exactly. But then if we hold it too long, then what are we missing out on? The fresh air and the new experiences. I love that. Correct.
So I think Abuela was holding on to the hazmat suit and making everybody wear their hazmat. Like, it was just, you know, for survival. I have much respect for that character, because of also the population that I work with. There's a lot of women that become single moms. Through domestic violence, and they have to become super tough to survive. And then they see that there is, and we've talked about this in counseling, in session, they're like, I can't connect with my child. And I'm like, that makes sense. You're so busy surviving. Like, you know, there's this hierarchy of needs. You know, you need shelter, house, clothing, you know, your bills paid, all these things. And it kind of disconnects you from the human experience. So I always tell moms, like, it's not your fault. You're not a bad mom. You're not a bad grandma. You've been surviving. And you've been surviving for so long. It's just, you know, it's difficult to realize when you're safe. Then,
I guess the thought that pops into my mind at this moment is like, because I'm feeling like inside, right? Like the resistance of being like, there is my feelings that I have about the grandma, the abuela, that I want to be forgiving and compassionate and empathetic because I understand her story. And at the same time, what you've done to your family is so harmful and it's so painful that a child had to come and rescue the family, right? A child that was put off to the side, a child that was being told that they're not good enough. That's the child that came and lifted up the family and like kind of shook them up into saying like, we need something new, right? And so I find myself kind of fighting the feeling of like, I understand it, I get it, I empathize, I have much compassion, and you hurt somebody, you hurt a lot of somebody's, right? And so somebody had asked in the chat the question of like, what are some tips about healing from intergenerational trauma, right? And so before even like healing from it, I think one of the important things that I like to kind of talk to the people that I work with about is empathy and compassion does not mean that you are forgiving or forgetting or that it's just like over, right? That we cannot say like, oh, grandma got it, she told the story, so that's that. because, right, that is the feeling that for a lot of people that are doing their work feels like the apology that you're never gonna get, right? Like, I can understand my family, I can empathize with them, but like, who acknowledges the pain that I have, right? And so that would be one of the excellent things to go to therapy for, to be able to explore what has been the impact, both the conscious, the unconscious, right? Or the things that you think may be affecting you, or the ways that you think your family may have been harmful, in understanding where those messages came from, making sense of them, and then relationally being able to figure out how do you move forward, if possible, and if you want to, and if it is in your best interest, right? Because you can be empathetic and compassionate and have nothing to do with the person that hurt you, and that be okay, right? And that again goes in terms of this movie, and what was so beautiful about it was to be able to see a family that some way, in a way very simplified because of the movie running out of time, of course, right? That it simplifies the fact that in order to rebuild, it takes a whole family system coming back together and acknowledging and honoring the person that was saying, see, something was not going well here. It had to get destroyed to start over, right? But the part that I want to emphasize is that when we're doing this intergenerational trauma, intergenerational healing, that a lot of times that is not going to happen. Our families aren't always going to go along. They're not gonna, always going to ask for forgiveness, right? And that is like part of that healing work. That the empathy, the compassion is one part, and then what do you do with it, right? Can you be empathetic, compassionate, and not necessarily forgive or have those people in your life? I don't know, that's my train of thought where it went.
Definitely. Well, actually, so the movie takes place in 2 days, right? So my youngest daughter, being the daughter of a therapist, she said, Mirabel solved intergenerational trauma in 2 days. I'm like, wouldn't that be nice? It is. Yeah, you're right, completely right. It's not easy. Also, we have 2 characters here, which are Mirabel and Bruno, right? And they're the
Can we talk about Bruno?
Let's talk about Bruno. No.
We are going to talk about Bruno.
We are going to talk about Bruno. So these are 2 characters that were like, wait. This family is not healthy for me. So the family's function is like a machine. There's a system, right? If a part of that machine leaves, like the machine is going to want to like, no, wait. Your role is to be this, and you're disrupting the way we function if you leave. So get back. And we see that happening a lot with Mirabel. Abuela would tell her, even if she told her, like, step to the side, let people do their thing, but that was her role, run errands or whatever, but just not be so much part. But she was still needed and wanted in a very exclusive role. So whenever we realize that our family is not working, we can do the Mirabel, like, hey, this is not working. Or there's also the Brunos, that like, okay, well, my family doesn't get it, and I'm going to set boundaries with my family. But cycle breakers or intergenerational trauma, people that want to work in the intergenerational trauma of the family can become the black sheep because they go against what, like, the system the family works.
I think it is really important to talk about the taboo of how many Latina and Latinx families ostracize family members who either speak on the pain or rebel against the expectations of them. It's for us to be okay with this ostracizing of family members because they're going against what the family has decided that the right thing is, right? And one of the scenes that to me, it like breaks my heart, is that scene where Bruno has made a little mesita on the other side of the wall and has put a plate setting for himself. And the way that my heart hurt in that moment is because we love our families so deeply. We care about them. We want to belong in our families. But sometimes the best thing that some people feel that they could do is to take a break, put a wall in between, because the way the price that it would require for them to continue to engage and exist would be too painful, right? Like, what would it be like to be Bruno in a family where your existence, right, it is being pushed against, or being Mirabel being told like you're not good enough, like you don't fit with us, right? For some people, the ostracizing and the unkind words of not fitting in with your family, we sometimes minimize that, and we're saying, oh no, you're just going against the family. You are even deserving of being pushed out of the family because you're pushing the envelope so hard. In how painful the dynamic is in our culture, that it is okay to ostracize family members if you're not going with the grain that everybody else, like whatever everybody else believes to be true.
Right. Well, there is a note that I want to make here, because we always want, like, you know, ideally everybody can be themselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's not safe for everybody to be themselves. So there's instances where people choose not to like be themselves fully because it would cost them their family. And I think as therapists, we don't push people like, okay, go against your family and be yourself. And that is a process that everybody has to go through, and we as therapists have to respect, like your decisions, your process. You know? And this goes a lot with the LGBTQ community, right? We always say,
I'm gonna
like,
grab my cable because my phone's dying. That's not going away.
That's fine. I can keep going. So the LGBTQ community, we're like, you know what? If it's not safe for you to come out, don't come out. You know, and you have to be very cognizant that for some people, that means coming out would mean losing friends, losing family, not being part of that like circle anymore of family.
And that is so painful, because people don't understand the bargaining that you have to do sometimes when you're trying to decide, right, between, can I be myself, or do I stay hidden? Do I stay untrue to who I am so that I can belong to my family? And many people are forced. They find themselves in that position.
Right. Well, and that was, for example, Isabella's case, right? She's like, okay, well, I'm not going to be myself. I'm going to be this person that my abuela wants me to be, because I don't want to be ostracized like Mirabel or like Bruno, you know? So I'm just going to stay in this role that is expected of me, and I'm not going to be myself. Right. And when she tried being herself and she saw all that excitement of, you know, color and just like fully being herself and experiencing anger in, you know, all of that, Abuela did tell her, like, hey, what are you doing? So,
and the thing about ostracizing is that it teaches a lesson to the ones that are witnessing, right? We have so many people in families at times that know that what's happening to that family member is not okay. And we say, yeah, but I'm not going to get involved, right? And that is also part of survival mode. That is part of the lessons of the intergenerational passing down of how do we deal with issues in our family. Because what I've seen is that every time somebody does something that goes against the grain, I'm going to get ostracized, right? I'm going to be making mental notes from when we're children about what's appropriate and not appropriate. And I'm going to decide really early on, you know, that it's not safe to go against the people that I love. And so that's like a method, right? It's a tool to keep people kind of following and staying in line, right? Following the rules, because the danger of rebelling, we've seen it, what happens to people that rebel, and nobody wants to be that person, right? And that is such a, it's such a battle, because it is what if everybody rebel? Then the system would fall apart. But that could mean that there is maybe like not as many holiday parties where everybody's coming together. There's not many dinners where everybody's coming together, right? So some people decide that for them, the value of having your family, though imperfect, though maybe painful to be around them, that for them, that is the decision that they make. And can that be okay, right? Can that also be okay? So as a therapist, it makes it really hard, because when you come in to talk about these issues, we can't tell you what to do. We can't tell you what's right, what's wrong. Should you leave your family? Should you keep talking to them? Should you keep engaging with them? we don't know, because each of us is making decisions with the best information that we have present, and also thinking about our own survival, right? And so it makes it really hard, and that causes a lot of family conflict. Another theme that we see, right, and maybe not as obvious, but I caught it in there, is the sibling rivalry, right? That the sisters, the triplets, the sisters chose to be okay with Bruno being kicked out of that family because he didn't fit, right?
Right.
They were part of that system. And so even nice people, even people that are kind and loving, they sometimes participate in systems that cause harm. And
even
that's
by
part
not
of
speaking
healing.
up, even by being submissive to the system, because we see a lot of submission in the family, you know. Even the adult daughters' husbands, right? They didn't move out of the house. They had this like multi-generational household where there was a matriarch, and even the husbands, you know, they were like, okay, abuela.
Keeping the children even, right? Like just what abuela says, let's not talk about the secrets. Let's not say that this happened, right? And so kind people and loving people can also participate in keeping these harmful cycles ongoing.
Right. Adriana, can we talk a little bit? I remember in our conversation that we had, we talked, and I saw a comment on being the strong one, and maybe the different personas. Because you know what, guys, if you can comment on the name of the character that you identified with the most.
That'd be interesting. Yeah.
Like, let us know. Like, I think a lot of us were like, oh,
Are you a Luisa? Are you Isabella? Are you an Antonio? Are you Mirabel? Like, who are you? Let us know.
Yeah, type it, guys. We'd love to hear. That's something that Adriana and I commented. So there's so many characters that we can relate with.
Do you want to start talking about the sisters and kind of like family position and sibling positioning? Maybe we can start there.
Yeah, I'll be happy to start. So we have the strong one, right? Luisa, who says, oh my God, in her song, she's like, I can't cry. You know, we see a Dolores there. A Bruno. Bruno. Oh my God, another Bruno. So we have the strong sister, the beautiful one, and then Mirabel, who was kind of like the rebellious one. You and I talked about we don't have to be one or the other, but we can be all of them in different stages of our life.
Somebody just said that in the comment. A little bit of many through my life. I love that. You're taking us right where we're going.
Yeah. Yes. That's exactly where we were going. You know, maybe you identify with Mirabel or with Luisa right now, or for most of your part, but maybe there were moments that you were even abuela or even somebody else.
That's a great point. Yeah. What I remember when we talked about it, one of the things that I said is that I personally have felt like all the three sisters at different points in my life, right? I have felt that I had to be the good kid, that I had to dress a certain way, that I had to follow up and kind of like, what was that phrase? Cuando sales de la casa, eres una representación de tu familia, right? Like you're representing your family, so be good. Or when te estás portando mal en la calle, and then, you know, in my family, we get pinched and be like, espérate que llegues a la casa, me estás haciendo ver mal, right? Like I don't look good because of you. And so this pressure of being the good one, I know that I remember that feeling and the weight that it was to like always be the good one, right? And at the same time, having to be the strong one and having to be the one that is just like carrying so much for my family, especially as a first gen. That is like something that, or the daughter or children of immigrants, right? So many times that we have to translate, that we have to take parentified roles with our siblings, that we have to take responsibilities that are beyond our years. Oh, because you're the strong one. Usually in therapy, when I hear a child being called the strong one, I'm like, red flag, alert, right? No child should be the strong one. Nobody should be like saving. Nobody should be like mature for their years, right? And then at some points in my life, most currently, I think I'm a Mirabel. I think I'm rocking the house. I'm rocking the house. And honestly, I'm waiting for other people in my family to say like, let's burn down the house and reconstruct. We got to start over, right? So I agree with that person that commented that they've felt different iterations of the characters in different parts of their life, because I'm gonna also say that I have been abuela too, because I know that I've kept the regime going because it was the right thing to do, and that it came from places of hurt and places of fear, right? So we all kind of have the opportunity to jump in many of these characters, and think that's why they're so relatable. What about for you?
I mean, I want to mention here, because I'm an only child. And only children, when we talk about sibling rivalry or whatever, only children are often like, what about me? What about me?
Mm-hmm.
So as an only child, I can also see myself being all three.
Mm-hmm.
You know, of course, in my childhood, I was Isabella, right? Like, I have to be like perfect. I had to, you know, very feminine. This, like, all these gender roles that my culture like put on me. I was taking them, and they were mine. And then in my teenage years, I was Mirabel, completely like super like against the norm. As I grew up, now I'm Lisa, especially being a single only child, because now my mom is aging, and I'm like, oh my God, I have no one to like give me support. But I also
you got to be the strong one now.
I have to be the strong one. But I also see it in families with multiple children, because as an only child, I'm like, okay, now I'm gonna be the strong one because we can work as a team. But I also see in families with more children that there tends to be a leader, there tends to be a strong one, and the other ones kind of just like follow along. But I definitely I've been an abuela. You know, I did a little bit of everything.
Pamela is asking, can you unconsciously cause intergenerational trauma, and what are the signs that it exists? And the answer is yes, and very likely.
Most definitely. I think that a very important question to ask ourselves: what are my values, and where do they come from? For example, in my personal family, you know, we've experienced poverty. So now like success is like, okay, come on, work, you know. So I had to realize, I'm like, oh wait, that comes from trauma. That comes from trauma. So maybe ask yourself what your values are. What, like, every family has certain values, either spoken or non-spoken, right? Because sometimes we don't even say like, okay, family, these are our values.
You're the strong one. Like, if we're gonna give you the label, like if it was that clear, it probably would make it way easier to work through this. But a lot of the times we don't even recognize what role has been assigned to us, or what role we acquired on our own through this messaging that you're talking about.
Right. So yeah, what are your values, and where do they come from? Or also, what is your relationship with, even like, what's your relationship with food? What's your relationship with money? What's your relationship with alcohol? Right? Because I used to think like, oh, my family, we don't have issues with alcohol. I don't have a relationship with alcohol. And then I was like, oh wait, my grandfather had a sibling that was an alcoholic. So my grandfather was like, no alcohol in the house. So, you know, like, where do all these relationships that you have with things, and where do your values come from? And how do you transmit that to your family?
I think the other part here that I think is really, really important to talk about is that intergenerational and historical trauma doesn't always have to come from a person. It can also be the effects of things like colonialism, capitalism, poverty, displacement, right? Because one of the things, the faceless bad guys in Encanto, is these three representatives of the painful colonial background, historical trauma that all of us that have roots anywhere, right? Like, people have been displaced. Our people have been displaced. Either our people have caused harm, or our people have been receiving harm, right? And so even intergenerational trauma can look as passing down beliefs about colonialism, about capitalism, about the value. If you're not hustling, then you're nothing, right? Or you're a loser in the family if you're not doing these things. And so this messaging, like you were saying, where does it come from? We want to examine it. And one of the things that I always tell my clients when I'm working with them is about, we have to examine the gap between who you are, Do you understand who you are and who you've been told you should be, right? And sometimes there is like this big gap because it's merged together. I think I am who I've told to be, but then when I have these desires to go against my family, when I have these dreams that go against what my family wants for me, then it becomes an issue, right? And that probably is that gap that I'm kind of like talking about, of who do you want to be? How do you honor the people that you come from? How do you honor your family? How do you remain loyal to your family while also recognizing that you are a person and that you have the right and the ability to want things that don't go along with what everybody else wants, right? And so kind of having that questioning that you're talking about is like, what do I believe and why do I believe it? Where does it come from? And it's almost like I explained it in a matter of consent. Do I consent to continue to believe the things that I do? If I've always believed that the hustle is the only thing that I'm good for, is that consensual? Do I consent to be that person? If I'm the strong one in my family because for X, Y reason, this is the role that I play, do I consent to be that, right? And starting wondering and questioning. And then the other part about the intergenerational trauma, right, is like, how do we use our knowledge and our examination and this values and beliefs, not as a wagging the finger, right? You did this to me, this happened to me, right? But how do we invite people into these conversations of healing, in this invitation to reconstruct, right? Maybe we are the person in the family that is staying quiet, that is not standing up for what's right. How do I give myself the permission to step in and to talk to somebody and say like, this is not okay, this doesn't feel good. So-and-so is getting ostracized, right? And if you're the person that is very vocal, how do you use that to claim and to say, hey, like we've been going in this direction for a long time, but here is a family member that has a different need. Why are we being so resistant to accepting them, to welcoming them into our family, right? We need not only disruptors, but we also need allies. We need people that are saying, hey, can we work together to build something different for all of us?
And for those difficult conversations, if you are in therapy, you can always let your therapist know, like, hey, you know, can I bring my mom in for session? Because sometimes people, you know, it's difficult to have this conversation at home. It might not be, you might not feel safe. So as long as there is not domestic violence, because we don't recommend counseling, there's domestic violence, because whatever the victim says in session can be used against them at home. As long as there's no domestic violence, you can bring to your sessions whoever you want to help facilitate difficult conversations and to help the dialogue.
One of the things that people don't realize is that you can have adult family therapy too, right? A lot of the times we think about family therapy being for only like parents with young children or with teenagers, you know, and all of that. But you can come to therapy as a family, as an adult family, to have some of the discussions around secrets, around traumas, around needs that you may have that other people are not seeing, right? So that's also a possibility. Yeah, and you're right. Allies are so important in a family dynamic. We need, right? Maybe this is like a bridge to talk about collectivism versus individualism and like this competing values, right? Around this idea of we are collective people. We are functioning as individuals, but yeah, there is power in us coming together and recognizing that our family, as a family, we may need to heal.
Definitely. Something that I do also with my clients, because allies are important. Sometimes when there's conflict, it becomes like a fog. We can't see who are allies. So we do like, we make a list where you can say, it's like a safety plan, right? Who do I go to? Who are my people? Because when you're in the middle of conflict and like emotions take over, we can't see who's there. So I invite you to write down, like, okay, who are the people that have supported me before? Who are my safe people? Who can I go to? That's something that I do with my clients. Adriana, can we talk about, there's two topics I want to talk about.
Okay.
Parentified children.
Parentified children.
Yes. And also, if we can touch base, and I saw someone commented, the image that family wants to, like,
the Madrigal.
Yes.
The
like,
Familia Madrigal.
The image that we want to carry on as a family.
Yeah.
If I can start with Parentified Children,
Mm-hmm.
because trauma often brings Parentified children. If the adult is not functional, is not healthy, and we see this again with domestic violence, where the mom is surviving, and here comes the child who now feels like they have to protect mom or dad,
Mm-hmm.
whoever the
Mm-hmm.
survivor is, and they watch over the little siblings, and they
Mm-hmm.
have all these other responsibilities that are not
Mm-hmm.
age appropriate. And in the movie, we see they talk about children being given this gift when they are of age,
Oh my gosh. Of
right?
age, like 5. How
And
old is Antonio? Like 5?
I know. I was like, wait, of age? Like they're children, and now they're given the responsibility of caring for their family
And
and
caring for
caring
the
for the
town.
community. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
caring for the community, but also like their family. And the weight that comes from a child having these responsibilities, you know, it's pretty sad. I mean, that's something that I
Mm-hmm.
noticed in the movie with the, when
Yeah.
children of our age, and I'm like, wait, it's a little
Mm-hmm.
kid.
The part that kind of comes up to me is about the sibling rivalry that sometimes comes out of this dynamic of having a child in the home that is parentified, right? With this multiple, when there's multiple children in the home. And one other thing that I want to say, like when the parent is not functional, it's not necessarily a judgment or saying that the parent isn't like a good parent or a
Right.
good person. You can be rendered dysfunctional because of your experiences. If you're worrying about putting food on the table and having to work 3 jobs, you are not going to be available to your children. And that is not a judgment or a criticism. It's just a part of what creates this dynamic, right? That somehow the child, a child, sometimes the eldest, sometimes the middle, you know, depends on who it is. They, as a child, think, right? My parent needs help, I'm going to step in. And the parent, right, because they need support, they need help, they're like, step in, raise the children, cook, cuídense, here's the llave de la casa, right? Because I'm working 3 jobs, I am busy, I'm going to school, I'm going this, I'm doing that, like I'm just trying to survive, right?
Right.
And so the dynamic that it can become really harmful is around siblings. When one child has been picked to be the parentified child, that is stuff that takes years sometimes to recover from, because the way that siblings have related to one another has had a flavor of power dynamics that did not belong to them, right?
So
This
there's
power dynamics did not belong to them, but it becomes hierarchical: parent, parentified child, and then the other children.
I was going to exactly say that the family hierarchy, you know, is the parents or the caregivers, guardians, whoever they may be, and then the children. If there's a child that goes like up above a level, there's going to be conflict, and it goes against the family structure, and there's going to be resentment with the sibling. There's going to be conflict. Now there could also be more than one parentified child in the family. You know, maybe one that takes care of the emotional needs, one that takes care of other needs. You know, it's just especially by gender, right? So we see daughters and sons taking different parentified roles as well.
Somebody commented and said most of the times an expectation versus a desire. And see, this is the thing about children. Children want to be good. They want to be seen as good, and they want to be seen as helpful. And this, yes, may be expected, but the way that children are understanding it is that this is how I am good in a family, right? This is how I'm good. And it gets reinforced by being like given tokens and pads, like, you're so mature, you're so good, you know, they're so smart for their age. And right, that is continuing to provide like that reinforcement that if you are help, or if you're doing things that are selfless for others, that you are somehow good and better than the other kids, right? Like, you got it under control, I'm gonna tell mom, right? And so that kind of dynamic really can harm sibling relationships, because it becomes confusing. Can I relate to you as a sibling where we have similar power in the family, where both of us have the right to have opinions and to have hopes, or for me to challenge you as a sibling? But if I'm seeing you in a hierarchical way as a second parent, that will impact the sibling relationship, right? And that is also another dynamic that comes in terms of, like, I'm thinking about in Encanto, right? Of like the two older sisters, because they had this power, were seeing Mirabel as a nuance. They were seeing her as somebody that was just like getting in the way and interrupting, right? And it was because these two sisters had given a role in a gift, and that was a way to be in Parentified, because they were sharing these gifts with the adults. Up until a certain point, the people that had gifts were only like older, right? Antonio gets a gift later, but at the beginning, right, it's everybody who's older. So you're just supposed to stay on track, and like if the kids are nuances, right? That's a way of being Parentified.
Yes, and this reminds me a lot of Luisa, right? Because even in the song, she says, "Who am I if I can't carry on? Who am I? You know, I've been given this role and this identity by my family, and if this is taken away, if my strength is taken away, I'm nobody." Right? So it's a burden for the child that's Parentified. Yes, it comes with power, but it's also comes with a lot of weight.
Yeah. It does.
It's heavy. It's heavy.
It's heavy. Yeah.
So,
there is just so much. Like, we spoke ourselves like 2 hours, and I know that we could probably keep going. And so I'm like thinking, like, any just kind of like closing words around this conversation that is so powerful. I hope that you now go and look at Encanto and think about different themes, right, that may be present in your family or in other families or in the families in Encanto. I know that some of the themes we have like a whole list of themes, so this is how many themes we saw. Okay, so there's a lot. And I'm just thinking about some of the things that we have notes and notes. Some of the things that somebody asked about, what are some of the themes? We have intergenerational trauma, survival mode, collectivism, parentified children, single parenthood, and being surviving. We have demands on eldest daughters, expectations of perfectionism, Marianismo, machismo, all of it.
Yes, also Pepa, you know, Tia Pepa, is that her? Yes.
Yeah, Tia Pepa.
She's always been told, like, hey, put your cloud away. It's making us uncomfortable. Put it away.
Come down.
Come down. Yes.
Put it away.
But at the end of the movie, like, she makes it hail. There's hail, and everybody's comfortable in that hail. I was like, oh, that's awesome. I don't know if the movie was written by therapists, but it was like, it's so amazing. I saw, so G. Franco's asking, who does a parentified child grow up to be?
I mean, it's complicated because it depends, right? Because being parentified is often not the only identity that you're taking in, right? Sometimes the parentified child grows up to be rebellious because they just don't want to be parentified anymore. Sometimes the parentified child removes themselves from the family because they cannot imagine a way of existing without the pressures and the demands of them, right? Sometimes a parentified child, and sometimes parentified child just grow up to continue to be parentified, and they don't have any issue with this being the role, right? And that also happens.
Yes, so they can become resentful as well, or they can have anxiety, depression, you know, because there's that expectation, and it's so difficult. Once you take on that role, it's so hard to figure out who you are, be yourself. And there's always this need of, I'm not worth anything if I don't take care of others, like Luisa, right? If I'm not
always helping, I'm not hustling, I'm not doing, then I'm not a value.
So then there comes all this anxiety and depression, and it's just lots of mental health issues.
Yeah. So do you have any last words in terms of Encanto, or any, you know, maybe you relate to some of these characters, somebody in the live relates, like, you know, this is stuff you can come to therapy for, you know. I have a couple of words to say, but I don't know if you have anything that you want to add first, just to kind of like start wrapping up.
Me or our viewers?
You, Odette.
Oh my God. Thank you so much, Adriana. I mean, I've been driving my family crazy talking about Encanto. And I this is the tip of the iceberg, because there is so much more to the movie. We look forward to doing more, hopefully, right? Guys, if you have any ideas or anything, please let us know. Fun Suburban Mom just told us that Encanto won a Golden Globe.
Nice.
That's awesome. Especially because they always say that movies with people of color don't generate revenue. So I think it's so that we're making that. But guys, if you have, we have a few more minutes. Do you have any questions? But thank
For
you
me,
so much, Adriana. It's been
yeah,
amazing. Thank you.
I've had so much fun, and like a couple of the things that I wanted to say as kind of a parting words is that I know that over the last couple of weeks and the weeks that are coming, I've been talking in therapy with a lot of like my patients, my clients about Encanto. Media, the stuff that you see on Instagram, if you ever have a quote that like sits out to you, take that to your therapist. Talk about Encanto with your therapist. Like, we find meaning a lot of the times in what we're consuming outside of us, and we don't realize how that is like triggering thoughts, right? And that's why we wanted to host this live, because there is so much to learn from things that are packaged in a certain way about ourselves when we just kind of start like dissecting it and thinking about it. Lean in with curiosity if some of these themes are true for you, and maybe you haven't tried therapy, maybe therapy feels really scary, or maybe you're still kind of battling the taboo of going to therapy. Terapia no es para locos, therapy is not for crazy people. Most of the work that I know I do in therapy is about healing our hearts. And
Yes.
that can mean 1,000 things.
I
And
think
so,
that's changing a little bit,
yeah,
right? Hopefully,
yeah.
I know I've had, like, with some of the kids that I work with, the little ones have no problem. They're like, I'm talking to my therapist. I'm like, yes, the stigma is going away. I've had 17-year-old client that actually said, I want to be the intergenerational trauma healer in my family. And I was
Oh,
like
dream.
at 17, I didn't know what intergenerational trauma was. Like,
But
but
you know what? You could be 60 if you're watching this live and you're like, I kind of am a little bit of an abuela. Is it never too late to begin the journey of understanding why do you do the things that you do? And do you consent to continue to live in that way? Because others have told you to do it that way. What if it's not the right way? What if it's not the right way for you, even if it's the right way for everybody else in your family, right? So obviously we're advocates for therapy. We
right.
hope to destigmatize these conversations. Therapy is about the hard stuff, but the hard stuff can take many different looks, right, when you're doing your therapeutic work. And so if you have a therapist, like, please talk to them about Encanto. Think about the themes, write them down. I know that Odette and I have been watching the movie and taking notes and notes and notes about it, because it is just like so interesting. So interesting. I know that I've shed more than a few tears because it's been like rattling and triggering and things like that. But at the same time, it has also helped me honor my growth and my positioning in my family, my compassion of how I see those around me, right? So this is an opportunity, and I'm just really happy that we had consistently about 25 people the entire time. And so
thank you so much, guys.
I'm just like, Odette, it was not just us, like everybody wants to talk about this. It's awesome.
Yes. Guys, again, I always say therapists are like shoes. Find one that is comfortable for you. If you have a bad experience with a therapist, we don't take it personal when you say, you know what, I'm going to try somebody else.
Yeah.
Please find the right therapist for yourself. Just, give it a try. We are team you. We are always looking for your best interest, and that's our mantra, always looking for our client's best interest.
It's your journey, and we're gonna be right there with you. It's not our agenda, it's not what we want for you, it's helping discover what do you want for yourself and why. And that's a really exciting journey, even though it comes with some tears and with some painful stuff. But we just hope that that you kind of feel more called into this journey of self-awareness and self-inquiry, because this is how we heal families. We begin by healing ourselves and then bringing those who we love along, right? So I'm so thankful, and I think we're gonna have to do like a part 2 or something. So
if you guys want a part 2, let us know and we'll be more than happy.
Yeah.
And
if you're looking for
some topics that you want us to touch base on, I'm sorry, Adriana.
No, I was just gonna say, and if you're looking for a therapist, directories that you can go to is latinxtherapy.com, inclusivetherapist.com, psychologytoday.com. And when you go into the directories, you can search by identity, by sexual preference, by gender. A lot of us are really open about parts of identities because it helps people find a therapist. And so when you go to the directories, right, when you are finding a therapist, like, think about what's important to you and then search for that. We are out there.
When you're looking for a therapist,
we're talking about Encanto, we're out here. We want to do this with you.
When you're looking for a therapist, it's okay to look for certain gender, certain culture, think of who can you connect with. That's what we want you to do. You know, if you want a male therapist, you want a non-binary therapist, you want a female therapist, a Latina, a white therapist, Asian therapist. Think of all those things, because that's going to help you find the right person for you. Try on therapists and see which one you feel comfortable with. Remember, progress is not always linear. In the movie, the house collapsed. Healing can be messy, can be painful, can be challenging, can be scary. But then you start building those foundations, like in the movie, in therapy.
So let's rebuild our casita together and keep on growing and keep on healing. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We'll save this live, right?
Yeah.
It will be in our pages. So whenever you guys want to revisit, you're more than welcome. Keep shooting us ideas, whatever you guys want us to discuss. And we are super excited. Thank you so much for your attention, for participating with us. Thank you so much, Adriana.
Of course. And before you go, take a deep breath, roll your shoulders back, unclench your jaw, drop your tongue from the roof of your mouth, and take care of yourself tonight. Do something nice. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Bye, all.
Bye, guys.